Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today, why it is that Venus in astrology is exalted in Pisces. So I'm going to read this little blog post that I wrote on my website. You can check it out at overthoughtandunderstated.com. But here I'm going to add a little commentary in between. So here it goes. Why Venus is exalted in Pisces. The planets in astrology represent different parts of our personality and perception, and none of them can stand alone. As the planet of structure, discipline, and conservatism, having too much focus on Saturn, for example, in a chart, leaves one cold, rigid, and lacking in social tact, because Saturn is about structure and order and discipline, right? Not about social tact. Too much emphasis on the sun, for example, makes one extremely egocentric because the sun is really the most visible and conscious part of the self. It's the ego. Okay. Likewise, when Venus is overemphasized, it makes one hedonistic, materialistic, and superficial. As it's at its low manifestation, Venus is, in a sense, the wild woman who merely uses men and the world for her own pleasure and gaining of resources. She needs the Sun and Saturn, for example, a father and grandfather, respectively, to maintain her sense of identity and to have discipline for what is sustainable in the long run. The signs of the zodiac possess an intrinsic evolutionary quality, and I've talked about this before in other videos. Each sign has something that the one before it lacks, but it overcompensates for that trait. For example, Aries is often too fast and impulsive. And Taurus, the next sign, overcorrects for that by being slow and stubborn. It follows then that by the time we get around to Pisces, the last sign of the zodiac, some sense of ultimate balance has been found among all of the signs' energies. We are able to observe this in those with strong Pisces placements in their chart, such as the sun or otherwise. There tends to be something spiritual about them. They're typically patient, good at listening, creative, and unique. A conscious Pisces seems quite evolved, albeit otherworldly. And of course, this is a Pisces higher manifestation. I do have this kind of theory, which maybe I could talk about another time, that someone once asked me, "What's the worst sun sign to have?" And I responded, "Pisces." And they said, "Well, what's the best to have?" And I said, "Pisces." There's nothing better than an evolved Pisces who is on a spiritual path. There's nothing worse than one who is not, because they have the same sense of spiritual awareness, but without the spiritual awareness. So they can be actually the most egotistical of all the signs if they're very underdeveloped. Although dominant or ruling signs are often heavily emphasized in descriptions of the planets, and having such placements really catches one's eye in observing a birth chart for the first time. It's the exalted signs of each planet or sign that indicate a more developed and well-rounded expression. Just because someone has Mars in the ruling sign of Aries, for example, it doesn't mean they'll maximize the potential of Mars any easier than someone with Mars in Cancer. Rather, they're more likely to naturally express the negative effects of that planet. And in many cases, it will take extra work to temper that planet's energy. It goes for any dominant sign-planet combination. We think of Venus as being much softer than Mars, as it is the more feminine of our surface expressions. But the ruling sign of Venus can produce difficulties of its own, or their own, since there are two. Gotta fix that. Ones which are more covert, being as femininity per se is more covert in its expression than masculinity. For example, someone whose natal Venus is in Libra will have a softer, more compromising social style, as opposed to an Arian one that takes a deliberate me first approach. The darker sides of Venus are more difficult to detect than those of the Sun, Mars, or Saturn, the more traditionally masculine planets. This would be the case, for one, because of the things that Venus represents. For example, love nature, social style, likes and dislikes. These are more qualitative and subjective things. Paradoxically, they are exemplified most clearly in their two ruling signs of Taurus and Libra, even though the planet's strengths are also exemplified by these same signs. They are so, however, in a way that is more narrowly focused, much like how Mars's blunt warrior energy is most clearly expressed in its ruling sign of Aries. So, Venus's qualities are represented more clearly, its raw qualities, by Libra and Taurus. Kind of represent the two different spectrums of Venus's qualities. But it doesn't mean that they express the best version of the combination of those things. They're actually more narrow in those things. So we look to the qualities of each ruling sign of Venus to understand the scope of its strengths and weaknesses. Taurus is the fixed earth sign. And appropriately, we can observe that Taurus reveals the Mother Nature side of Venus and the native's connection to the physical, sensory realm. Nature is fixed, and this includes the sensory realm of economy as well, like money. Nature is fixed in its way of being as it is, whether we like it or not. Right? Changes come slowly and incrementally, like Taurus, through an evolutionary process of proving that they'll serve the whole of nature over time. Taurus is cautious in matters of change. And while this can serve as a useful vetting process for new functions in nature, it can also express itself as sloth, stubbornness, and refusal to change due to fear and lack of foresight beyond the physical. It's Taurus's main drawback, but so is it half of Venus's main drawback. Libra has a very different set of qualities, showing the other spectrum of significations of Venus, we could say. As the cardinal air sign, it expresses itself through the more mental realm, rather than the physical one. It initiates change more consciously from a need to achieve balance in its social environment through connection and relationships, not so much in equilibrium in nature and in your wallet, for example. They're more likely to flow with fashion trends than to dress in a way that is simply comfortable, as Taurus does. Both Venus rulers seek comfort. Libra seeks comfort through acceptance, while Taurus seeks comfort through sensation. The danger of appealing to social acceptance is that Libra sacrifices its sense of self and becomes superficial in its expression. We've all seen a Libra person who adapts to the room as to add balance to it, right? Take a Libra girl. She's in a room full of girls. She's the most masculine person. If a Libra girl is in a room full of guys, she's extra feminine, right? Even more so than she is with her girlfriends, much more than she is with a girlfriend. So she's like, Libras are trying to attain balance in their environment, provide balance to their environment, right? In the mental realm, in terms of, say, their conception of gender expression or something like that. It's just an example. As one of the traditional feminine elements, it seems fitting that Venus would be exalted and therefore produce its most ideal form in a water sign. Because the combination of Taurus and Libra express things of Venus in rather specific ways, and neither shows the full potential of social, romantic, and value expressions, It is imperative that Venus travel through the entire zodiac to prevent itself from becoming too pleasure seeking, too superficial, and lacking too much, not having enough sustainability to the things that it values. Remember, Venus is not a very deep planet. It's one of the two closest planets to Earth. Can't remember whether it or Mars is closer to Earth, but what that symbolizes is that Venus is a very conscious part of our nature, and we often don't question, oh, I like this or I don't like that. The things of Venus are, or like what kind of person I'm into. The things of Venus are quite conscious to us, but it needs more unconscious grounding. It needs a deeper foundation in order to function properly. Okay. So Venus really needs to learn higher values through the lessons that each of the other signs provides. For example, fixed Leo shares the quality of stability with Taurus, but with its fire, it inspires Venus to grow and be more creative. Cardinal Capricorn shares the quality of initiation and leadership with Libra, but it provides a framework of logic, practicality, and discipline to Venus that Libra doesn't often provide. A water sign, however, offers a quality of being able to fill a container, and not just any container, any time, but the right container in the right way. And as a mutable sign, Pisces has that trait of adaptability in detailed tasks, but it's also very big picture focused enough to know when and how to adapt. Right? Venus is about what we want, but without the broader framework within which to manage our desires, what we want lacks tact, purpose, even life. It also seems fitting that the rawest expression of the masculine planet of Mars, that is Aries, for example, is placed first in the zodiac, just before Taurus, which is the first ruling planet of Venus. Aries is perhaps the one sign that Venus does not need to integrate on its own, and that it doesn't pass through on its evolutionary journey into Pisces. But it rather serves Aries as a complement to the things that Venus provides. And Pisces, remember, evolves back into Aries because the cycle of the zodiac is often, it's represented in the shape of a wheel because it's cyclical, right? After all, women are from Venus and men are from Mars, right? And as it turns out, Mars does quite well, and Pisces too, depending on the house placement. That's kind of just a little side note. But anyway, by evolving into Pisces through the other signs, Venus is learning how to value and organize its desires in a more conscious way. It learns that neither Taurian sensation or Libran fairness can serve as the highest value in any realm, whether social, natural, aesthetic, or moral. Venus is enlightening itself with a sense that all of the signs offer value to its otherwise singular ones. Pisces, being, in a way, the most evolved sign of the zodiac, gives a home for Venus to seek comfort in the most important way of all, higher truth. Also thanks to Daddy, Granddaddy, and the rest of the zodiacal family. Anyway, so that's my some thoughts written on my blog if you want to check it out on why Venus is exalted in Pisces. Remember, the exalted signs of each planet are those that can exemplify an ideal form of that planet when it's developed, when it's at its best, but it still comes down to you to make the conscious decision to embark on a spiritual path, which is going to get you to that form, regardless of what sign your Venus is in. And in order to help you do that, you can book a consultation with me. See my links below in the description, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.